Welcome to hour number 2, live right here on this Thursday on the early line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. And on this Thursday, week number 11 of the 2024 NFL season begins. Tonight in Philadelphia, and what a dandy we have for a second consecutive week on a short week Thursday night football game to start week 11. A divisional clash, a battle for the top spot in the NFC East, where the Eagles at home will enter in first, but by just a half game in front of the Washington Commanders. Washington is 7-3. The Eagles are 7-2. Number one spot in the NFC East will be decided based on the outcome of Thursday night. DRS, what more could you ask for on a Thursday to kick off week 11?
Absolutely nothing. You got really good weather, too. It's going to be cooler, chilly conditions in Philadelphia. No real precipitation in the forecast. You take a look at light winds, so we should have a clean slate here. And also, you don't have those huge travel demands, Ben, right? You see a team from Minnesota fly out to Los Angeles on a Thursday, Washington to Philadelphia. Nice little short trip. Shouldn't have any lag for the Washington football team coming into this one. I expect a good game. We look at that points total at 48.5. The Eagles are a 3.5-point favorite, and I think that is about right. Washington is a quality football team, but the Philadelphia Eagles now getting healthier. Let's also remind ourselves, last week, the Eagles on the offensive line a little bit under siege against the Dallas Cowboys. They get some of their pass rushers back, which included Micah Parsons, but Jordan Mailata activated yesterday. He will be playing in this game as their star left tackle. That offensive line is ready to go. A.J. Brown's healthy. Devonta Smith. You take a look at the tight end position in Dallas Goedert, Saquon Barkley, even that ankle injury, another week out for Jalen Hurts. The Eagles are full gas for tonight, and that bodes well for them.
Yes, the Birds certainly are. And the reason that Philly will enter this NFC East showdown in the number one spot is because of a 5-game win streak for Philadelphia. Donnie, we expected the Eagles to be the divisional favorites entering the year. In fact, they were priced as such, and they are right now. We'll look at the outlook for both of these teams in just a moment. The next half hour here on this Thursday on TEL is a breakdown and preview and every synopsis that you need for Thursday night. Let's go back to that number. 3.5-point spread in favor of the Eagles. The total stands at 48.5. Philadelphia has been booked as a favorite in 4 of 5 games on this win streak. They've actually only covered twice, and for the first time last week when laying more than a touchdown, the Eagles did cover in a game it was expected to be comfortable. They hammered Dallas in Dallas, but probably more indicative, DRS, of the Cowboys in the dreadful season that Dallas is having in terms of anything that Philadelphia is doing. But the Eagles have covered in 3 of these 5 wins. The reason I highlight that is there's been a few times on this win streak, Donnie, where it's felt like, okay, the Eagles are squeaking by in winning games ugly. They're expected to win easy. I would say now, though, entering tonight, it feels like Philadelphia is optimistic once again. It feels like the Eagles are deserving of being the favorites in the NFC East and one of the true conference contenders around the NFC.
Yes, and also you're trying to set up what you're getting out of the Washington Commanders. They're a good football team. I give them a lot of credit for how far they've come. They have close loss last week to a quality Pittsburgh Steelers team. But sometimes it feels like you do level up in class, and you're waiting for that big-time victory. They stepped up against the Baltimore Ravens, took a loss. They stepped up against the Pittsburgh Steelers, took a loss. Opening day, you probably want to wipe the slate clean. Rookie quarterback on the road in his first start. And quite frankly, if Tampa Bay never gets injured, what their record would actually be at this point in the season. But we can only qualify that based on what we're going to expect tonight. And that's a team in the Philadelphia Eagles that's been there, done that before, winning division championships, getting to the Super Bowl. Jalen Hurts, the veteran quarterback, versus Jaden Daniels, the rookie quarterback. You have a lot of strengths here on that Philadelphia Eagles. When that offense is full go and everybody's intact, they move the football with ease. But let's also remind ourselves that Philadelphia Eagles defense under Vic Fangio gets better every single week. And who would have thought coming into the season, boy, the Eagles need some help to replace that aging secondary, which on one side had Darius Slay, and on the other side, had a mix mash of a million different plays last year. But now we take a look and say, CJ GJ comes back into the equation, playing solid at safety. Blankenship, one of the better safeties in football, but then you draft 2 kids in the first round, Quinyon Mitchell and then Cooper DeJean, 2 of the best defensive backs in football overall. How about that?
Cooper DeJean? Just wait until he takes off the helmet tonight. Donnie Rightside is going to be fired up. DRS, for the Commanders, it's been interesting to see how historic and prolific this start has been, not just for the quarterback, Jaden Daniels, but this is why a situation really can dictate the outcome for a young rookie. Dan Quinn is a proven NFL winning head coach. Yeah, he got fired by the Falcons. He also led Atlanta to a Super Bowl. You all know what happened in that game. He will always be remembered because of it, but they got to the Super Bowl, and they were a really sound team in Atlanta. He hires Cliff Kingsbury. Okay, we can make some jokes about Cliff's success as a head coach. As an offensive mind, there is no issue with Cliff Kingsbury. Washington was right to be competitive. Win total was 6.5, 7.5 before the year. To be this good at 7-3 through 10 weeks with a rookie quarterback and a first-year head coach, not many people expected it. So oftentimes, Donnie, that team is booked as an underdog early and frequently, and then later in the year, week 12, 13, 14, they start to see the respect in the odds market and the flip to a favorite. That happened way earlier than anticipated, perhaps, for the Commanders. Washington has not been an underdog since the second weekend of October in a game against the Ravens, where they closed as a touchdown dog, and they then pushed on that spread. In fact, Washington's 3 losses this year against a good Bucs team and Jaden Daniels' debut in Tampa to start the season. A competitive game, albeit losing by a touchdown against the Ravens, and then a 1-point loss last week, albeit as a slight home favorite, but again, a 1-point loss against a 7-2 Steelers team. Washington is the underdog. It's a short week. Philadelphia is playing some great football, riding a 5-game win streak. All of that makes sense. The Commanders, of course, on the road as well. But I do not expect, although I do believe the Eagles win, for this game to be a lopsided affair. Washington 2-1-1 against the spread as an underdog. Now let's parlay it into the total. All 4 games for the Commanders as a dog this year have gone over. Washington over in 7 of 10.
Yeah, the over-under is interesting because, again, it's Thursday, it's prime time, it's 2 division rivals, we get that. But once these offenses each have a running mate together, why can't we get the 48.5 points? You see in some games where the Philadelphia Eagles run out to an early lead, like, this offense can't play with us here. We'll slow it down. We'll run Saquon Barkley. We'll churn and burn it. But also at the same time, if you do have a running mate, the Eagles can really get after it. And we haven't even seen that full-go 100% healthy Eagles team. You saw it a little bit last week against the Dallas Cowboys, and quite frankly, they probably scored 50 points if Dallas had any mojo at all in offense with Cooper Rush, which they didn't. Same thing with Washington. You played a quality defense last week, and you saw what that final score was, 28-27. Am I saying it's going to be that close tonight? I do think the Eagles win and cover, but I don't have the feeling that the Eagles win this game by double digits in an easy blowout. I think it's going to be a pretty good game. Yeah. But if the Eagles offense is moving it, Washington can counter that. I love what the Eagles defense has been, one of the better teams in football, but you're going up against a good offense. And good offenses, they're going to score on good defenses. That's just the way it happens. But if we're looking tonight, why can't we get over 48.5? I think we got some juice absolutely tonight.
So the Eagles have covered in 3 of 5 games on this win streak, 17 points or less for the opponent in all 3 of those covers as a favorite when they have covered twice against divisional foes. The Giants and the Cowboys are certainly not the Commanders. They have held the opposition. The Giants to 3, the Cowboys last week to only 6, to a combined total of 9 points. We'll talk about the outlook and the tail of the tape for both of these teams on the other side, and then the individuals that will dictate the outcome, the props market, up next on the Early Line.
Enter into the magical world of McLuck.com, where even the smallest of spins can win real cash prizes. Adventure into over 1,000 of the best Vegas-style slot games. So what are you waiting for? Unlock your free welcome offer today. Join the fun where winners play and players win.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night, I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Don?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Tail of the tape for a first-place battle tonight to kick off week number 11 in the NFC East. Philadelphia has won 5 consecutive games. The Commanders did lose by just a single point, but still a defeat last Sunday at home against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Washington falls to 7-3. The Eagles improve to 7-2. That half-game distinction for Philadelphia in front. The first of 2 meetings between Philly and Washington this year. The next will come week number 17 outside the nation's capital in Landover, the Commanders hosting the Eagles. Donnie, it's one of the interesting things, if you will, of a Thursday night divisional duel. It's a short week. It's not that full week of preparation or rest or to get healthy, but it's still a divisional duel. So the game has that added layer of significance despite being on a short week, where Philly at home has the distinct advantage as a 3.5-point home favorite. The Eagles are now minus 240 to win the NFC East. The Commanders, that second best price. It is really a 2-team race. There will be no test from Dallas, and of course, not from the Giants as well. Plus 430 for the Eagles to win the NFC. Now the second best number, moving in front of San Francisco. The Eagles looking to be that contender, and Donnie in pole position in the NFC East.
Yes, and that's the way it should be. The Philadelphia Eagles coming into the season had aspirations of winning a Super Bowl, so it's no surprise that they're healthy and playing good football, that they're right back up there in the standings. But also understand this. The reason why those numbers are elevated right now is because they have the Commanders at home and they are favorites. So based on the odds market, they're supposed to win that game, which means they'll take another game lead over Washington and also have that half-game advantage from the tiebreaker, even though, as we said, they're still going to play again second half of the season. We'll be at the Commanders on December of the 22nd. So I'm not surprised by these statistics and also by the fact that they are now moving up the ladder in the NFC, maybe over the San Francisco 49ers because how banged up they are, and their division is going to be much tougher. You look at that Eagles schedule coming up. Commanders game is going to be a tough one. We have that mini bye built in before you go out to the Rams. We'll see what they are. Then you take on the Ravens, but it does soften up. You get the Panthers and the Steelers. Now, the Steelers are good, but you got them at home. Commanders on the road. But look at the end of the season. The games that you need to clinch the division and or number 1 seed or anything there in your standings, it's the Cowboys and the Giants, both at home. Both of those will be cooked and easy victories should the Eagles need them, as long as they're somewhat healthy.
And I do want to make the point then, DRS, about Washington, because like you, I expected the Eagles to play in a Super Bowl. We did our early season pick six, right? Entering 2024, I had Eagles, Bengals, Philly winning a Lombardi trophy. So the fact they are back here and I can feel optimistic about that ticket once again is a good thing. I also had the Eagles to win the NFC East based on the trend that is nearly 20 years old now. No repeat divisional winner in this division. The Cowboys won it a season ago, expecting that from the Eagles. The Commanders would also keep that trend going, so not exactly the best from that perspective. But DRS, if I do believe the Eagles, as the odds indicate, are going to win the NFC East, despite the Commanders maybe being an 11 or 12 win football team, I also still very much believe that Washington is a playoff contender. I do not expect a historic start to the rookie campaign for Jaden Daniels to cool off in such a way that Washington now only ends up with one more win this season at like 8-9, dropping 6 of their final 7. And that is also reflected in the odds. The Commanders are minus 800 to be a playoff team. You still expect the same, right?
Absolutely. I just like what I've seen. And also, they're learning to win here. And even some of those measure-up games like the Steelers game, they were rated in that just a play here, a play there. They end up winning that game. They got the Eagles, but also keep in mind for them, Ben, next 3 games, Cowboys win, Titans win. At the Saints should be a win before they play the Eagles again. And they also close the season at the Cowboys. There's a lot of wins left on the schedule for the Washington Commanders. No doubt about it.
Yeah, and when you thought about a DRS entering the year, you're like, oh, those could be difficult games for a young team that is on the come up, but how do they handle it down the stretch, trying to earn a playoff berth or contend for a divisional crown? It's not really going to be that. Washington right now, one of the easiest schedules remaining, the final 8 weeks or 7 weeks of this NFL season. How many is it? 1, 2, 8 weeks of this NFL season. So that's good for Washington. The Eagles, a slightly more difficult schedule, but they have the Steelers and the Ravens, but outside of that, they got the Giants, the Panthers, and the Cowboys, and the Rams, who are sub 500 at this moment. All right, quarterback comparison for Thursday night. Jaden Daniels, a historic start to his rookie season. The efficiency numbers were ridiculous. They have tempered out a little bit here for Jaden. After returning from the injury against Carolina, he has not had a completion percentage north of 70 entering that game against the Panthers. He started off with his first 4 games all at a 71% mark or better. But Jaden Daniels is still playing good football. Jalen Hurts is playing some really good football, DRS, entering this Thursday night.
And also Jalen Hurts taking care of the football. Now, last week he did throw that interception in the red zone, which was bad. Took a fumble on his own side of the football field, which only allowed at least maybe 3 points on that drive, I want to say. But outside of that, he has been nothing short of fantastic. And also keep in mind, again, healthy offensive line intact tonight. All wide receivers expected to play. Tight ends and Saquon Barkley. If he's going to have a good game tonight, the Philadelphia Eagles are going to be really tough to beat because I think the Eagles have the advantage on defense. But from an offensive perspective, I expect a lot out of Jalen Hurts. And the one thing that you do know is they keep pricing his touchdown market really low. If they get within the 2-yard line, it's automatic. It's him. There's not even a thought process of handing it off to Saquon Barkley. He should be priced a little bit more appropriately, but as long as he's around that minus 100, plus 100 number, it seems like a free meal ticket each and every week for the team that should be able to be in the red zone multiple times tonight, Ben.
DRS, it was exactly my thought in terms of the handicap for my favorite touchdown score last week on the pick 6. The pricing is incorrect. If Jalen Hurts was not a quarterback and he played any other position with the proficiency that he scores touchdowns, it'd be minus 200. It'd be Derrick Henry type numbers. He has scored 8 touchdowns in the last 4 games for the Eagles. He has had multiple touchdowns in 3 of the last 4. He has scored in 6 of 9 games this year, 5 of the last 6. It should not be minus 110. And part of that is the brotherly shove. Part of that is also he's just really athletic and can break a scamper for 15 yards and find pay dirt as well. It is mispriced. Jaden Daniels, by the way, 210 yards or less in 2 consecutive games. The Eagles secondary, a liability last year. As Donnie mentioned, so much better this season and only getting better.
Not a safety.
Hey.
Need help with your NFL picks? Get NFL insider knowledge from Pro Football Doc, Dr. David Chow, with Sick Picks at Sports Injury Central. We reveal hidden injury advantages the sports books miss. Our doctors provide insights, and our algorithm tells you who to bet on. Spreads, player props, totals, in-game bets, Sick Picks covers it all. Get a free week now with promo code SportsGrid at SickScore.com.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. Brady, I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern.
Live right here on the early line, our continued deep dive into Thursday night football because of the magnitude of the game to kick week number 11 tonight in Philadelphia. The Eagles and the Commanders, that breakdown continues. We looked at the quarterbacks. Now time to the rest of the offensive skill players in the prop market. After missing 2 consecutive games, Brian Robinson Jr. dealing with a hamstring injury, expected to return tonight on a Thursday. That's really good news for Washington. But Dr. Donnie will tell you, hamstring injury usage for a running back, perhaps a tad precarious. Shout out to our guy, Jesse Metzger. Beautiful work behind the scenes to include Saquon in the Kelly Greens. Although I don't think the Eagles are wearing the Kelly Greens tonight, are they? No, right?
They should always wear the Kelly Greens. But yes, I think they're unbeaten in the Kelly Greens too. So anytime you want to bust those out, which includes if you make it to the Super Bowl, Eagles, wear them.
For sure.
Come on.
It just looks fantastic. Donnie, I expect a big Saquon Barkley night tonight against Washington. Now, the Commanders are really good against the pass. Top 5 secondary in the NFL. They add Marshawn Lattimore at the trade deadline from the Saints. That should only help improve the back end of that defense. The Commanders up front, not all that great. 5th worst rushing defense in the NFL, allowing more than $144 on the ground. And if Saquon would have torn Dallas apart last week, like maybe we expected, or perhaps even better, if Philadelphia needed Saquon to tear Dallas apart, I'm not sure the number is just 92.5 with a 13.5 receiving yards prop. 116 is a big number for Saquon Barkley. That's his scrimmage yardage number that he has gone over. He's had at least $116 in 7 of 9 games for Philadelphia this season. Kind of liking the props led by Saquon Barkley tonight for the Birds.
Yeah, you're not getting any cheapies there at the FanDuel Sportsbook at 92.5 is the rushing props. You're essentially asking him to cross the century mark, which is tough to do, but he is going to get the carries. The one thing we know, the reason why I liked last week Kenneth Gainwell coming out of the backfield, because I figured a Sunday football game with the Cowboys, but a Thursday night game, you might get some extra carries out of Gainwell, which he did. 6 carries, easily went over his 12.5-yard rushing number. But this isn't one of those games where you're looking at backups. Like Saquon Barkley is going to be out there, Ben, 90% of those offensive snaps that he'll be lining up both as a pass catcher and a rusher. I love him tonight also to score a rushing touchdown. I don't care if it's minus 180. Let's just say the Eagles team total somewhere in that high 20s number. You're expecting 4 touchdowns out of the Eagles. He's going to factor into that. But it's a number at 92. It's like, boy, I don't know if I can get behind that because he could have a really good football game, 15 carries for 86 yards and score twice, and the Eagles could blow them out. It's just that I don't know if I'm comfortable with saying I need 100 yards out of my running back to cash in on that ticket. That makes me a little bit, maybe second guessing. But Brian Robinson, not going to be on my card at all. If Brian Robinson did not have a hamstring injury, absolutely. Anytime touchdown market, usage rate, absolutely phenomenal for me. But I would wait on some of those numbers to pop up on Austin Eckler once again, because I think you'll get some depressed numbers now that Brian Robinson is starting. Hasn't played the past few games, limited practices. Yes, I understand he's ready to go, but that hamstring injury can go at any time. Let's see you play a full game here and have that 16, 17, 18 carries, maybe 20-plus touches in a football game. Then I'll take you next week because I love the kid. I think he's a fantastic running back and a great goal line back. But right now, he's completely been off of my board. I can't trust him.
Completely agree, and I think you see that reflected in the yardage number. It's not all that high because there is some uncertainty around his status or if he is fully 100% ready to go tonight against the Birds defense, Donnie, that has greatly improved week over week with Vic Fangio. The reason I don't think Saquon is too high in the market is because of the combo number. Again, 116 in terms of scrimmage yards in 7 of 9 games. In fact, I think he'll probably score tonight, right? Total was 48.5. But Saquon has actually only scored in 4 of 9 games for Philadelphia. 8 total touchdowns. Every receiving touchdown he has had has also come in a game where he has scored on the ground. His price a little bit skewed in the way that Jalen Hurts' number is, but not quite in the same way. Hurts should be stronger. Should Saquon be at minus 180? That remains to be seen. You know who's been so thrilled, Donnie, that Jaden Daniels is his quarterback? Terry McLaurin. 60.5 is the prop. He is having an illustrious season, the best of his NFL career with Jaden Daniels.
Yes, he absolutely is. And from going from, Eric Bieniemy, where he said literally in that final couple games of the season, all I do is run cardio. I don't even get the football anymore. For one of the better young wide receivers in football, he's now having that reemergence. Why? Because he's getting the football. He's open and the football is being delivered here. You take a look at that price point of 60.5. That's not a bad number. Now, granted, the Eagles secondary has been absolutely locked down. But if you feel Washington might be behind in this football game and probably putting up north of 20 points, he's going to be involved in there. I like that 60.5 out of Terry McLaurin. I think that makes a lot of sense.
He has gone over that number in half of the games for Washington this year. Already 711 receiving yards for Scary Terry. More on the early line next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With 2 former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell coast to coast, only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on the early line on SportsGrid, we set the stage not only for Week 11 in the National Football League, but Week number 12 in the 2024 college football season. Our third to final Saturday of the regular season. Talk about that. We're already almost at the end of this regular season. And, of course, everything takes on the added significance. Second week of the college football playoff rankings. Some are quite upset by what the committee seems to be doing to bolster up the SEC. We shall see. Big game on Saturday in Athens, Georgia, under the lights and between the hedges between Georgia and Tennessee. 10.5-point spread as we get you ready for a huge weekend in the SEC. It is the game of the week. If it's a big weekend in the SEC, that means Mark Zinno joins us here on this Thursday on the early line. Zinno, we appreciate the time as always. How ready are you?
Well, Ben, I'm very ready. Apparently not as ready as you are with the leap that you made. I want to wish you congratulations. I've already set the line at a summer wedding at minus 385 because I don't think there's any way that you'll be able to have a fall wedding in any size, way, shape, or form. So that number is going to keep moving north, but we established the opening line of a summer wedding at minus 385.
Now, I don't want to skew the odds makers, right, or the book of Zinno, but spring could also be, part of that, depending officially based on the months. Could be April, May 2026. Yes. So I just want to make sure the odds makers in your risk room have all of the necessary information. Okay?
Listen, all I know is it won't take place any time between the weekend before Labor Day and the national championship. February to July, open season for everything.
Like when you get later in a year, it's like this team to win the championship or the field. Yes. Fall or the field. The field is minus 40,000. Can't even come up with a number strong enough for the field because we know fall Saturdays are sacred, certainly as the fall continues to roll on. Mark Zinno becomes the mouth in the South, and these are his SEC picks. Not a ton of drastic market movement, Zinno, for that game that we just displayed. A top 15 tilt between Georgia and Tennessee. The Dogs, number 12, falling by 9 spots in the latest CFP rankings. Tennessee remains put at number 7. The Vols did beat Mississippi State handily this past Saturday, but big news for Nico Iamaleava, of course, was knocked out of the game. His status for Saturday still unclear. The line has moved slightly, Zinno, in favor of UGA, now up north of double digits, 10.5. Total working its way down from 49 and a hook to 47 and a half. With the status a little bit uncertain for Nico Iamaleava, the freshman quarterback for Tennessee. How do you approach this matchup for Georgia and Tennessee, knowing the Dogs need to bounce back?
Well, when this front number first posted, it was kind of eye-popping to go, whoa, Georgia minus 9. But then you start to think and go, odds makers are telling you something. There's a big gap between these two teams here, specifically what the Tennessee offense has done since they entered SEC play, which is pretty much squat, saved the game last week against Mississippi State. In case you guys haven't noticed, even at that 47.5, Tennessee has not gone over that number in any SEC game other than the game against Mississippi State. Like, the offense just doesn't have it. The question is how good is the Tennessee defense and how much can they shut down a Georgia offense similar to what Ole Miss did? Remember, Georgia's only touchdown last week happened because Ole Miss turned the ball over inside their own 20-yard line. All they could do was go, 12 yards to get a score. Other than that, the Georgia offense couldn't move at all. Tennessee defense has the capability of doing the same exact thing. I got to go under here. If I have a 48 or 48.5, I got to go under. I just don't see how either one of these offenses really move the ball with any sort of regularity here. Tough to lay this number, especially, when it comes to Tennessee's defense. But, I don't trust Tennessee's offense, especially without Nico I. You could try to say his last name. I'm not going to. You're better at it than I am.
Leava, yeah.
Yeah, that guy, yeah. As long as if Nico's not in this game, Tennessee may be dead in the water offensively.
If we look at this game, though, Mark, and you see that price point, is that baked in that he's not going to play? Because usually for me, it used to be back in the day with the pros, they get a concussion, they're more likely to play the following Sunday. But always like high school and college, they're usually behind the eight ball saying, look, take this slow here. I don't think he's playing this weekend, but where does that line end up? And also, does that give you extra ammunition to maybe even take Tennessee if you're getting an extra 3 or 4 points? Or maybe if he plays, it drops down lower? How does that play out for you from handicapping from here till Saturday?
I think you saw the initial bump already. I mean, the opening line was 9.5. It kind of sat at there. Once we got the news about Nico being in concussion protocol, that was the first big buy that pushed it 10.5. I'd be surprised if you get another buy. I would tell you, I think if we get news definitively on Friday that he's playing, you'll see immediately buy back on Tennessee at 10.5. Right? We're sort of in college at least. Key numbers aren't the same as they are in the NFL, but 10.5 obviously matters. So I look at it from that standpoint. You'll get a buyback if you really believe that he's going to play. You got some sort of inside information that he's going to play. Take the 10.5 and hope that they can keep it close. But still, I have a hard time believing that this thing gets to 48 or 50. Like that just seems like a really high number given these two defenses.
I've said this a few times this year. I've already bet the total under 48.5. Georgia enters a football game as not the elite defense. Last week, it was Ole Miss. Entering the game in Austin against Texas, it was the Longhorns, who weren't bad in that game. They picked off Carson Beck 3 times. This week, the elite defense entering Athens is Tennessee. It is not Georgia. Georgia's fine, and Georgia has greatly improved over the last month. And, of course, we evaluate Georgia based on the historic defenses of 2021 and 2022. But this is where Tennessee stays in this football game. Whether it's Gaston Moore or a slightly banged-up Nico Iamaleava or a stud running back in Dylan Sampson, Tennessee's defense containing Carson Beck, who in the 4 games in SEC play, where Georgia has been booked as less than a 3-score, not even like 7 points, 3-score favorite, he has turned the football over multiple times in all 4 of those games. That's where Tennessee can strike the upset. That's where Tennessee keeps this game close. But, of course, without Nico Iamaleava, that becomes more difficult, for the offense even to do anything to not make this a one-sided affair.
Well, and here's the other point I'll just add on this game. Like, Georgia used to have book-in tackles that blocked well. Now they have turnstile tackles that can't block anybody. And the Tennessee pass rush is going to make life hell for Carson Beck for pretty much most of this afternoon. Or evening, rather. I don't know how Georgia can block Tennessee up front. I think it's a complete mismatch.
Let's get to some other SEC.
Go ahead. No, DRS, go ahead. Sorry.
Let it rip, man. Go ahead. Come on. Double down on it. Let's go. Big game.
On me. No, you take us to the other SEC games. Go ahead. Yeah.
Look, the mouth of the South. We got to get around the SEC. We got to do it quickly here. Missouri and South Carolina. 7-2 Missouri taking on South Carolina 6-3. Both of these teams top 25, but a heavy favorite here. South Carolina close to 2 touchdowns here. How does that play out, Mark?
I mean, to see South Carolina lay in this number isn't something I would have thought in SEC play when the season started. So there is that. Unfortunately, it's not, Brady Cook, it's Drew Pine, and that's the reason why South Carolina's defense should be able to slow down Missouri's offense enough to cover this number at under 2 touchdowns. I like the Gamecocks.
Yeah, listen, South Carolina is a really solid team right now. Somehow, some way, Missouri is still ranked. Look at what Mizzou has done against Power Conference. We're certainly ranked competition this year. That spread makes sense. We'll go elsewhere around the SEC to talk big pictures, on the other side of the break, because we're reaching that later stage in the season where we've got a couple of non-power conference, non-conference competition games for the SEC on this Saturday and what it will mean for college football playoff hopefuls. Then we'll get to the rest of the country in week number 12 of this college football season, and I will no longer step on the toes of Donnie Rightside. You have my word. More on the early line up next.
The sharpest football contest show in the land, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show, focuses on Circus Sports Million, Circus Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was
that's what your
looking down
grandma
and did
does,
not
right?
know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, it's going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
The Mouth in the South is here. That is Mark Zinno for a second consecutive segment, setting the stage for the third to last weekend in the regular season of this college football campaign. Let's go back to the SEC boards. You see LSU and Florida, an intriguing game. Of course, the Bayou Bengals have lost two consecutive big ones against Texas A&M and, of course, getting hammered last week against Alabama. But still only two conference losses for LSU. Texas, a road favorite against Arkansas. That number, less than 2 touchdowns, but still the Razorbacks, a good underdog. And then a couple of non-conference games for Alabama against a 9-win FCS team in Mercer, but they're a 41.5-point favorite, and Texas A&M takes on New Mexico State. That would be peculiar if Diego Pavia and Jerry Kill were still there for the Aggies. Now, Zeno, one of the reasons this is important is not really for A&M and Alabama in the SEC title race, of course, as we know. But when you look around the rankings and you look around the standings, these games are starting to become even more important. There are 8 teams, 8 in the SEC with 2 conference losses or fewer. There are 3 teams, Tennessee, Texas A&M, and Texas. And oh, by the way, the Lone Star Showdown returns to end out the regular season on that final Saturday that have only a single loss. There are 28 plausible scenarios for a conference championship game in the SEC entering this third to last weekend of the regular season. It's why the SEC slate for the remainder of this year, each and every game, could alter the conference and the college football playoff every week.
Well, it just means more, right? I mean, that's the motto, and that's why it is what it is, because every game just means more. So well done, SEC. Look, to your point, nobody can afford to take a week off, right? And given where we are with the rankings and everything else, the fact that Georgia was actually left out of the college football playoff should set off alarm bells to a lot of other SEC teams going, if they can leave Georgia out, they certainly can leave us out. So that are going to tell you where everybody sort of stands in this whole thing here. And, look, for Tennessee, you mentioned it, like, if they lose this, I guarantee you they drop below 12. If they lose this game, they are on the outside looking in. I'm not sure that they can recover. I still think there's a path, again, for some of these other teams, even with 3 losses, to get into the college football playoff. I think it's absolutely possible. But to your point, again, I don't know that anybody has the ability here to say we can take this one easy. and we'll worry about next week or the next big game. Every game is big right now because there's still 3 more weeks of this. We got to figure out, what those 28 scenarios look like.
Every game certainly is big. Mark, I need your help on this one. 10:15 Eastern this Saturday night. It's Kansas, it's BYU. BYU is in the top 10. BYU is undefeated. Kansas comes in 3-6. BYU favored by -2.5 points. Talk to me, Mark. Talk to me.
How bad do you want to step in front of the wagon that is the Utes in Provo at night? No.
Saturday Saints.
18 of the last 20 night games at Provo have gone BYU's way straight up. This is a short enough number where you can lay it. However, this is one of these things where the pressure may start to get to BYU. Like, of all the teams we just talked about all these teams in the SEC that have these concerns about what else, how they could get left out of the playoff. The one way they get left out of the playoff is BYU not winning the Big 12 or taking a loss and then, Colorado, winning the Big 12, whatever it may be, or somebody else getting into the championship game. Everybody else needs BYU to run the table because that just locks up the Big 12. It's a one-bid league and they're done and then they move on. But this is what the pressure that BYU has to deal with is because they're hanging in a spot in the rankings that some people may say they're not as good as that team or that ranking is, but I don't know. This is a stay away for me just because Kansas playing with a little upstart energy here, starting to look like the team we thought they might be throughout the year. But I do not want to get in front of the wagon that is Provo at night.
Yeah, again, this is not BYU on the road in Kansas City at Arrowhead against KU. It's a number that's very intriguing because of that very fact. Now, BYU is the 2022 TCU or last year's Washington to an extent. The odds makers do not power rate this Cougars team very strongly. And a couple times in the last 3 weeks, BYU has escaped an ugly game, but still remains perfect. Kansas has been the most compelling team in the Big 12 all year. The numbers were crazy. The Jayhawks had not covered a number until 3 weeks ago against a bad Houston team, and then kept the Sunflower Showdown closer than expected, and of course won outright last week to hand Iowa State its second loss. I like some points in this game. BYU over in its last 5 and in 7 of 9. Kansas over in 5 of 6 Big 12 battles. The only game that did not go over technically was a push against K-State on that closing 56, but Zeno had the number earlier, as did I. I cashed an over ticket. Kansas is one of the most efficient red zone teams in the country, efficient on third down. Jalen Daniels looked really good last week for KU. Quickly, Zeno, let's get to Colorado because the Big 12 now becomes very compelling. CU has the easier path of anybody in the Big 12 to reach the conference championship game. Colorado is the favorite to win the Big 12. Despite a loss in conference action, BYU does not have any in conference or at all this season. Plus 135 for the Buffs to win the Big 12. BYU at a plus 185 number. And BYU beat their in-state foes in Utah last weekend. That's who Colorado gets on Saturday. Early kick in Boulder, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. Double-digit spread in favor of the Buffs. How do you see this game playing out against the Utes?
I mean, does the sleepy 10 o'clock start for Colorado affect them? Do they start slow because the body clocks aren't right? I mean, I could look to a first half under here. I could look to Utah in the first half, maybe, if I'm getting 6. The problem with Utah, again, is I cannot trust anything about that offense. I cannot trust that offense to produce points at will. The quarterback situation has been such a mess all year long. I've just walked away and stayed away. They were great last week in the first half, right? That's great with Utah. Cut the game in half. If they come out hot, they're going to be fine. If they're trailing big, they ain't coming back.
And there's still quarterback questions for the Utes. Isaac Wilson, Zach's younger brother, expected to play. We shall see. We'll talk more football with Mark Zeno up next.
the sharpest football contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek. As I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
One more college football game to preview for Week 12, then we transition back to the NFL and the start of Week 11 tonight in Philadelphia. A big one, Zeno, on Saturday in Annapolis in the American. Tulane now ranked in the college football playoff rankings. Let me just confirm that. In fact, man, I'm really struggling here today. Yes, they are. Number 25 in the country. That's what I believe. Against Navy. Now, Army is the undefeated team, of course, in the American and overall. Navy has suffered a couple of losses, did bounce back last week in a big way against South Florida. Tulane is also unbeaten in AAC competition and about a touchdown favorite on the road against the Mids on Saturday. Zeno, how do you see this game playing out between the Green Wave and the Midshipmen?
Well, I think that Blake Horvath has got things back under control. Look, Navy isn't scoring 35, 40 points a game like they were prior to the loss at Notre Dame. And then, of course, they backed it up with a very bad offensive showing against Rice. They seemed to bounce back last week. But this is a team at home this year that has done very well in Navy, and they've been able to control the game and score. Look, I would expect this thing to be similar to the Memphis game that Navy played earlier this year, that 56-44 thriller that kind of went back and forth with teams playing catch-up. I think Navy has to get out to a lead here and play with a lead if they have a chance to win this thing. I don't know if they can catch up. Tulane's passing is still a lot for any team to contend with, right? Mensah's got over 2,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, 4 picks on the year. He's been very, very solid. Can Navy keep up with the guys on the outside? Hughes, the receiver, has over 1,200 yards receiving, 13 touchdowns. These are mismatches for Navy defensively. So I think if Navy can get out to a lead and sort of set the tempo there, they'll have a great shot here, to win this game. And I'm actually pulling for them simply because I want Army and Navy in the American Athletic Conference Championship game and then to play again the following week in the Army-Navy game. So, which would be pretty incredible for college football history.
I'll tell you what's incredible tonight in Philadelphia. A big battle, by the way, home of many Army-Navy games in Philadelphia. The Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles. Supremacy here in the NFC East. A minus 3.5-point favorite at minus 115 juice at the FanDuel Sportsbook, where it currently stands. A total of 48.5 mark. How's this one play out tonight in Philadelphia?
Look, we know this is a new Commanders team from what we've seen in years past. but I don't know this is a new Commanders defense. Last year, the two finals were 38-31 and 34-31. There were a lot of passing yards thrown by the Eagles all over the place, like all over the place. Both Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown had huge games. I think A.J. Brown, 2 games last year, had 17 receptions for 305 yards and 4 touchdowns against the Commanders' defense. I don't expect that to change. Marshawn Lattimore's not dressing for the Commanders in this game, so he's not in. I would expect more of this. I think it's a shootout, guys. I also like the over in the first half at 23.5. They cleared this number in both games last year by a considerable margin. There was 21-17 in one of them and 17-10 in the other. So I think we get a lot of points here, despite the fact that it's a short week. And the Eagles really, I think they've sort of asserted themselves in the last couple of weeks as, the team we thought they would be after a little bit of chaos earlier in the year. And, of course, their fans still want their 7-2 coach fired, but it is Philadelphia. What more would you expect?
Listen, there's been times where Nick Sirianni, despite a 7-2 team, could argue that his seat is very hot because he has mismanaged to whatever. Anyway, as it stands, in looking at these two teams for the rest of the season entering tonight, of course, top spot in the NFC East on the line. Philly is there right now in nearly a $2.50 minus money favorite to win the division. But what is your outlook beyond the division for both of these teams? Do you consider the Birds a true NFC contender? Are the Commanders a shoo-in to continue the good play down the home stretch and be a playoff team?
Yes, I think the Eagles are a legit NFC contender. They just have too much talent. Jalen Hurts is not getting enough credit for what he's doing with the offense and the glue that he's doing everything to keep it together. As long as the Eagles' pass defense holds up, they should be fine. The Commanders will make the playoffs, but they will be one and done. Because as we've seen with the Commanders this year, the 2 times they've had to really step up in class against the Steelers and against the Ravens, they lost them both. This is a step up in class here, so let's see what the Commanders can do tonight. I don't know that they win this game again, but when they've had to step up in class and play legit opponents, they're not playing the Giants twice, and they're not playing the Panthers, and they're not playing the Bengals, guess what? They find themselves in much tougher games.
Those games were competitive for sure, where Washington does look the ilk of a playoff team. But, yes, they have come out on the losing end. Mark Zinno, as always, we appreciate the time. Thanks for being here on the early line. Hour number 3 comes your way next.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the 2 big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, hey, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.